Welcome to the ASSU Executive Debate for the 2026 election cycle. We're so excited that you all are here. Please grab some food. There's Panda over there. And grab a seat here. We have an exciting hour ahead. I want to first remind everybody that voting starts midnight tonight. You all should be getting your ballots, individual ballots, to your emails tonight. And voting will be open until Thursday at 11:59 p.m. So 48 hours. Make sure you put in your vote. Every vote counts. All right, and with that, I'm going to introduce you to our moderators today. First, we have Dylan Gohill, News Managing Editor of the Stanford Daily. And we also have Charlie Schumer, who's the Deputy Elections Commissioner. All right, I'm going to turn it over to you all.
All right, amazing, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the ASSU Executive Debate. We're going to be going through just the timing and the logistics of the event. So each candidate's going to start with 10 minutes of an opening statement. Each slate will be given 2 minutes to respond and deliver an opening statement. We'll then move into 60 minutes of questioning. Each slate will have 90 seconds to respond to questions on a rotating set of questions about university policy, their goals in office, university news. A lot of these questions are grounded in daily reporting as well. After every slate has responded, the first answerer to that specific question will have another 90 seconds to 30 seconds, to respond to the other slates in the question rounds. We'll then move into 15 minutes of a lightning round. These questions are going to be focused a little bit more on the personalities of the candidates and the candidates themselves. This will be rapid fire questions. Each candidate, not slate, will be prompted to answer in one sentence or less. And then we're going to move into a closing statement from each slate. They will each have 1 minute to deliver a closing statement. Great, so you determine the order by taking lots before. So we're going to first start with Jared and Celeste. Then we're going to go to Madhav and Eva. And finally, Jake and Angikar. Okay? So whenever you're ready, please begin.
Hello, everyone. We are Jared and Celeste, and we are farm raised.
Yeah!
We are so thankful to have all of our peers at this event, and we're excited to share our platform with you all. Stanford is an incredible place, not just because of its name or its affordances, but because of the communities that we build and our shared responsibility to leave Stanford better than we found it. We are proud to be running a policy-oriented platform where we plan to address issues on Office of Accessible Education, or OAE housing, empowering ethnic-themed dorms, expanding freedom of speech on this campus, lowering the costs of event spaces for student organizations, and making it easier for students to organize. I want to open this speech by talking about experience, because Jared and I are the most experienced slate running for the executive ASSU ticket standing before you today, full stop.
Yep.
No questions about it. No other candidate has a combined 4 years of experience working for the ASSU Undergraduate Senate. No other candidate has dispersed over $10 million back into the student organizations that run this campus. No other candidate has put the same amount of time, energy, and care that we have cultivated with our student body over these last 2 years. We are confident that this experience sets us apart because we will be able to hit the ground running starting from day one.
Yeah.
We know this bureaucracy, we know how to break down barriers, and we know that we will leave Stanford better than we found it. We hope that through this debate you're able to hear a little bit more about Jared and I and learn why farm raised deserves your vote. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Next, Madhav and Eva. You're good.
You've heard from us before. In May 2025, I wrote to the Stanford community in my first all-campus email announcing the return of Full Moon on the Quad. There was one full moon left in the academic year. Nobody else was willing to stand up. So Eva and I took it upon our sophomore selves to keep one of Stanford's most storied traditions alive, because that's the Stanford we want to go to. The ASSU presidency is an executive role. You're in these rooms face to face with student leaders and administrators, not bogged down in Excel spreadsheets and passing resolutions like the Senate. after 100 events and a dozen policy working groups, we have the experience and judgment to lead these negotiations, however tough they might be. Eva and I are uniquely positioned to bring Stanford together because we have worked with the co-ops and with Greek and with the arts organizations, with the VSOs and with the academic departments. And we know how to turn those relationships into action. Jared, Celeste, Angikar, Jake, it's an honor to stand alongside people who are as committed to Stanford as we think we are. We welcome the competition and we're excited to lead.
I'm Eva Lacey, running alongside Madhav, and I met him fall freshman year at a soccer game, and I instantly knew that he was the type of person I wanted to be friends with and spend my time with for the next 4 years, because Madhav is the type of person who lives life out loud. 4 years ago, Jordan Zeitz, who was the Stanford tree at the time, ran across the Stanford football field carrying a sign that said, "Stanford hates fun." Students then took that as a challenge. Working with Kyle Hazlitt, Emily Dang of In the Cards, Daniel Rashes, and Annie Reller, we brought back Stanford traditions and rebuilt student spirit. The Stanford you experience today didn't happen by accident. It was a conglomeration of a lot of effort and a lot of love from many different people. We're not running for what this role does for us. As freshmen, we inherited a Stanford we fell in love with, and now we want to leave it better than we found it. To us, that means traditions.
Thank you, candidate. That is time.
Okay.
Hello everyone, my name is Jake Hoffman. I'm running for ASSU Executive President today. I didn't come through Stanford through the traditional door. I'm a transfer student from Pasadena City College, and thank you. And I also work as a professional magician. Doing magic has taught me to connect with people from all walks of life, and lately the people I've been connecting with all over campus have been frustrated. If you listen to other campaigns on the stage, you know we have event planning and event committee, and they're arguing over same budgets who threw the best party. And meanwhile, Stanford transfers, athletes, international students, and undergrads are crammed in the triples, RD&E difficulties, and mobile transportation. So Angikar and I, graduate school of business and transfer, it's never been done before, and we have a unique perspective that he can add on.
Thank you so much.
Hi everybody. I think I'm Angikar, I'm a PhD student at Graduate School of Business and a Master's of Science in Statistics. I think we have a broad slate of policies that cater to as many students as possible of varied interests. We are living in a world that's being upended by AI, and right now there's no consistent AI policy in education. Every faculty is doing their own thing, and it's a race to the bottom because of classes graded on a curve. Stanford's war on fun means that that self-ops and co-ops are disappearing. We want to bring the unhoused Greek organizations back on campus. Thanks. We want to make the library open 24 hours even on the weekends. We want more vending machines on campus, more late-night food options, expanded gym hours. We want a Stanford campus that works for everybody. And we want free Caltrain, like Berkeley does it, for you to explore the Bay Area better.
It's okay.
Thanks. If you vote for us...
Thank you, that is time.
Thank you guys.
Now we'll move into the questions part of it. Again, candidates will have 90 seconds to respond, and we'll come back to the first response, the 30-second rebuttal. We're going to start with no breaks for our first question. The topic is leadership. Both members of the ticket will need to work together to get the most out of their time in office. What, in your opinion, is the chief responsibility of the ASSU executive leadership team? How do you plan to split your responsibilities between the president and vice president?
Thank you for the first question. For us, the role as the ASSU exec slate is that we would be the voice of the students. We're both Madhav and Eva, but also the main part of that job is representing all of you and the student voices and your opinions. So for us, that would mean sharing what we value and what we think the best things for Stanford are, but really it's listening to the student body and listening to all those different groups that we promise to represent. And then on the second part of your question about vice president versus president, Madhav and I have consistently been working working together for 3 years now, so we know how to work together as a duo, and we see both that president and vice president role as equal.
Just to add on to what Eva said, I think Eva and I are the only people who have served on the executive cabinet here at Stanford, which means we have an acute understanding of what that position means, who you get to meet with, how often you get to meet with, what those budgets look like. So when other candidates on the stage will tell you about all the policy changes that they're trying to make, I asked them to please share with us also what paths and what methods they're going to use to actually accomplish these. Because as somebody who's been in the role, I sort of have an understanding of what that means and what those negotiations are like. And I think we're going to capitalize on that experience to push forth both a great event schedule, preserve our culture, our zane, and our traditions, and also push forth policy proposals that we all, as students, feel like need to happen.
Everyone, we're going to ask for the questions to please save your applause until every candidate is done responding, just out of the sake of time. So next we're going to move to Built Different.
Yes, so a couple of things we want to address. Recently on Fizz, as of a couple weeks ago, there were thousands of people on this campus who want to advocate to bring back Lake Lag. Lots of people want to bring back this lake, so we have a very good strategy to do that. Obviously, housing and converting self-ops into theme houses is a big one that a lot of people are complaining, and the lack of fraternity houses that are on this campus. Back in the 90s, there was at least over 12 house frats, and there was more of a party environment for everyone. Now, today, there's only, I believe, 5? And there's not as much party scene as we'd ought to hope, so we're going to push more for that. And my VP will take the next question.
And I will personally look over the education section and the AI policy section. As a formerly FLI student during undergrad, I understand how difficult it can be to negotiate the social norms implicit within an elite campus. So policies that help FLI students understand, navigate campus better, that I will look over. I think Jake and I complement each other's background very well and will divide the labor accordingly and work best with the administration to achieve what's the best outcome for everybody on campus.
Next, Farm Raised.
Yes, I would like to start off with a quote from Steve Jobs during his 2005 Stanford commencement address. He says, "Great things in business, in this case ASSU, are never done by one person, they're done by a team of people." And that's exactly how Celeste and I plan to lead. Stanford doesn't have an idea of problems. Students know what they want: better events, stronger communities, and a campus that actually feels connected. And the challenge in that is execution. Celeste and I know funding better than any candidates on this stage, and that's a huge problem that a lot of campus groups face with event barriers, event space, and if we are to take this role, we are able to start day one. Another part is we plan to work as a team. We don't care about name recognition. We don't care about putting our names on particles. We care about getting things done.
And 30 seconds for no breaks.
Jake and Angikar, I would like to start off by addressing you guys. I would love to, over the course of the next 60 minutes, understand how we're bringing Lake Log back. Beyond that, I think, notably of the 3 candidate slates on this stage today, yours is the only one where the entire campaign featured only one of the 2 of you, without features from the other one pretty much on any content campaign related stuff online. Jared and Celeste, I would love to also understand what you know about these event barriers and event spaces and whether you've been part of any policy discussions where you've been able to make action on them.
All right, you can applaud now. End of question round. All right, amazing. So a couple of you guys alluded to this already, so we're going to move into a question based on housing. So over the last year, we've seen many co-ops lose their themes, Greek houses expand, self-ops change around as well. And so I want to ask, if you were in charge of designated houses on campus as co-ops, self-ops, academic-themed housing, ethnic-themed dorms, and Greek housing, how would you go about that process, and how would you ensure that the best housing allocation is for everyone?
We start?
Yeah.
We believe that if you find your community of friends organically and want to live with them, you should be able to live with them. Both Jake and I have met with multiple leaders of the de-housed Greek organizations and we promise to advocate for them to get their housing back, as we said. Beyond that, the reason Stanford was a fun place for the majority of its existence is because of the diversity of its students and the variety of the themes of the communities that they live in. in order for Stanford to be even of a more fun place in the future, we need more themed co-ops and we need more themed self-ops. We have mentioned that we want to prevent the conversion of doubles to triples. The way to do that is pretty simple. Because of the expansion of the undergraduate class in future classes, we need to move a lot more of the seniors to EVGR A and portions of Rains to make people living in, Stern and Wilbur and all to be less cramped. Stanford has had a ridiculous policy with alcohol where people organizing parties have been unfairly treated if somebody at these parties have been, got EMS due to alcohol, which has again made the party scene worse for everybody. Those are concrete issues where we can talk to administration about to make change the policies to be more fair, for something that's more reasonable, so that people are not unfairly targeted.
We appreciate you guys mentioning adding more house frats, and Celeste and I were proudly part of the committee that helped to add Sig Chi and get the Sig Chi house back, which we are very proud to do. We saw that in numbers and policies that the Greek life population is increasing and the housing for that was not. And so we are very big advocates on the policy side to be able to do that. I think the issue with Stanford housing is we can't just build more houses. And I think the ones who should decide what makes up these houses, whether co-ops, self-ops, Greeks, themes, are the students like you. I think, right now housing makes a lot of decisions without student feedback, and I think student feedback is really necessary. And one point I want to point out is in my past 2 years on the Senate, every single co-op has come under attack for some reason, and all of them have left with a lot of questions and not really sure why, and I think they're really integral to Stanford student life. Co-ops like EBF, Synergy, Terra, Column Bay, during all of our time has really come under attack. And then another point I want to hone in on is, the special thing with the idea of row sigs and these houses built around these, themes is unlike any other schools, and to be able to want to support, Mars, Xanadu, and really have a collaborative approach on our cabinet where row houses are really represented and can come together.
I want to start off by saying that Eva is an incoming RA at Mars, and I personally have lived in apartments, in Greek housing, and in themed housing my freshman year. I think the big thing we're missing, I want to echo what Jared said, is transparency in the process, and the way you do that is by tracking footfall. Where are the people going? It's clear every year that the frats and sororities are way oversubscribed, so we need to make ways to have those people be able to live in these communities as well. I would also like to point out in response to what Jared just said, in supporting the row houses and the programming, the row signature events, of course, incoming row RA, but also we've been attending these events for the past few years, in so much that we spelled all three of the row events that Jared and Celeste talked about in their platform were misspelled. That was Margaritaville, Stola, and Xanadosas and Mimosas. And we think it's important to show up and know what's going on before commenting on how we're going to transform their world.
Oh no! We also believe that co-ops are an integral part of Stanford's community and that they add critical culture and foster student activism. So many movements in Stanford's history have come from those homes, and we believe that that should be protected. We also think that housing shouldn't be a crisis situation, and people shouldn't be scrambling and freaking out about where they end up, especially after coming back from abroad. Also, we just had Sorority Rush this weekend, and we know that Greek is clearly oversubscribed, and we want to make sure that all of these students have the opportunity to live in these homes or be a part of those organizations if they so desire. So we will work with the IFC and the ISC to increase those opportunities. And as a future row RA, I promise that I will advocate for all of those houses, and I know exactly what I'm talking about when I say that.
It's funny that a campaign that spelled no breaks wrong is pointing out the spelling mistakes of other camps. All I want to say is that not everybody is part of Greek life. We will, of course, strongly advocate for Greek life, but there are people who live independently, and I don't think 4 candidates who are all members of or formerly members of Greek organizations can truly advocate for entirety of campus. The reason, for example, we stand up for Clipper cards is we understand that a lot of students who are upperclassmen and a lot of grad students live off campus, for which access to campus matters.
Thank you, candidate. Your time's up.
Let's give everyone a round of applause. Our next question will be about grad student issues. The Stanford Graduate Workers Union 2026, can you hear me? No. Okay. The Stanford Graduate Workers Union 2026-27 platform emphasized continued quality of healthcare, PhD funding guarantees, and protections for international graduate students. As executives, what would you do to advocate for the issues that matter to graduate students? We'll begin with Farm Aid.
Thank you for this question. Grad students are an integral part of this Stanford campus, and we would love to support them. To start with the graduate student union, we think the right to unionize is extremely important, and workers should be able to protest without fear from campus. And in terms of the union, a lot of they're fighting for is affordability, better health care, and especially with all the funding cuts coming to these master's and PhD programs, to be able to maintain the funding for the next 5 years. And those are integral parts of what Celeste and I look forward to talking about. And then in terms of grad students, we also believe that they should be really part of social life. And some of our ideas really are to impact both undergrad and graduate students. For example, this year on Halloween, both the grad student and undergrad student Halloween parties were shut down. And an idea Celeste and I have is working with, and this was due to the fact that the Santa Clara County ran out of ambulances. And so an idea for this that would both positively impact the undergrads and grads is partnering with the Stanford undergrad EMS services to be the first point of contact, so there would be less transports at these parties, and so that both of these grad and undergrad student populations would be able to enjoy their social lives together.
Next, we'll go to No Breaks.
This past year, under Ava Brown's leadership, we've activated grad student groups in our regular programming. That meant inviting them to Flicks. The past 2 Flickses we've hosted, half attended by grad students. Grad students are leading some of the organizational teams for Day in Mayfield. So we have that experience building those relationships and activating as part of the current ASSU exec grad student populations. I also think there needs to be some sort of like a funding equivalence. For example, the grad student Rains Music and Arts Festival being hosted the day before Day in Mayfield, 2 orders of magnitude lower in terms of the amount of funding they've gotten from the Graduate Life Office. And I think that's incredibly unfair, and we just see where, again, the football is going and create some calculus that allows us to say, if this is the amount of money the school is putting into undergraduate programming, we need to create an equivalence for grad student programming as well.
Madhav and I also have intentionally not yet built a cabinet because we want to make sure that we are having the people from those communities who can most represent their teams. So for us, this will mean that we will have a grad student represented in our cabinet to make sure that their voices can be heard and represented, because we are both undergraduate, so we can't speak directly to their experience. So we want to make sure we're providing a platform for them to do that themselves.
Next, Built Different. I believe we are the only one here on this stage with a grad student, so I'm going to hand this one over to Angie.
So I'm a proud member of the Stanford Graduate Workers Union and have recently become a steward for the Business Education and Law section. Right now we are living in a difficult socio-political environment where a lot of graduate students, especially international students, are afraid about their civil rights. We promised to work with the Bechtel International Center to create Know Your Rights sessions and to help them navigate the visa procedures more so that they don't, stay legal. More importantly, right now, especially with funding cuts to science, depending on the department, if you're PI funded, if you're having difficulty with rotation matching and faculty matches, you don't know if you can stay in housing and can afford health insurance in less than 2 months. Which means that Jake and I are in a much better position to address issues regarding grad life. We advocate for the EVGR pub to stay open 7 days a week. It's only right now open 3 days a week. And to create communities for grad students, creation of third spaces is very important, that we deeply believe in. So whether social life, whether it's stipends and issues that the Stanford Graduate Workers Union proudly works for, whether it's funding and other aspects of life, I think our policies are by far more expansive, that caters to the need of grad students. As a reminder to the audience, we were the first slate to get eligible on the ballot because we got both 100 grad students and 100 undergrads and 300 overall faster than the other 2 slates, for a reason. Because we think that Stanford has an amazing grad population and an amazing undergrad population.
Thank you. On this stage, we want to hold each other accountable. No Breaks didn't answer the question. What is their take on the Graduate Student Workers Union? What are they going to do for affordability? What are they going to do about health care for grad workers? What are they going to do about issues that graduate students actually care about? On the It's Magic campaign, we commend Angakar for his work on the Graduate Student Workers Union. We want to continue that work, and Jared and I are also pro EVGR Pub 7 days a week.
We're going to move to a question on immigration now. So under the Trump administration, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE, has expanded enforcement operations, including raids in community spaces and campuses, which have led to an increase in arrests and deportations. This has affected how members of the community, both documented and undocumented, have shown up in daily life, and whether they speak publicly or to the press. It's important to note that the Daily is currently in litigation against the federal government over new immigration policies and their impact on international students and press freedom. So the question is, what do you see as the university's role in working with the state and federal government, and what role does the ASSU play in supporting students? Let's start with no breaks.
As an international student, I came here under a different federal administration, and I've seen firsthand all the changes that have occurred in our daily lives and the restrictions that have been imposed upon international students in the past year since this previous election. I think there's many things that international students face and immigrants and undocumented people face, like access to healthcare, like not being able to write for the Daily, or fear of persecution for publishing or for organizing, etc. And I think the school's role, more than anything, is to preserve itself as a space for free speech, for education, and to take stances against the tyranny of the federal government when they crack down on things like free speech, and they crack down on things like the ability to organize, etc. We think the ASSU, we think the executive branch should collaborate with the Senate, with the legislative branch, to put into action some of these resolutions that they pass, right? We are enacting the work and the opinions that they have formalized of being that of the student body by giving those opinions access to power and taking them to the highest levels of administration at Stanford, and making sure that they go beyond sort of the ornamentation of, hey, the student body thinks this, and is actually put into action across our daily lives, whether it be through Vaden or the SGWU or the Bechtel International Center, or even just hiring policies in the admissions office in general. Anything to add, Eva? Thank you.
I would like to point out that in one of our advertisement videos, I explicitly said that our International Staff Center is currently understaffed. And for international students in particular, we will work with the Bechtel Center to expand staffing hours, to organize Know Your Rights, civil rights workshops, and also help them navigate the OPT, CPT issues and remaining in status better. Beyond that, we right now, as the other slates also mentioned, that a lot of international students are extremely afraid because of crackdown on their speech and their political expressions. And we believe that Stanford should be a place where international students do not have a diminished experience because of their citizenship. And both in terms of our policies regarding free speech hours and supporting students politically, we will promise that international students, just like any other students, do not face the brunt of a very difficult socio-political environment when it comes to expressing their civil rights. And of course, that goes beyond what we already discussed about, helping people navigate jobs, internships, all of that. And I would also like to remind that 50% of our grad students are international, so a lot of what I mentioned previously also apply here.
I want to start off by saying that I am the granddaughter of immigrants from Michoacan, Mexico. So ICE hits very close to home for me. Jared and I are absolutely distraught about how our communities have been under attack by ICE. The things we've done to remedy this are go to political action town hall meetings. Jared and I go to these every single time that they are offered. We want to work with the university to connect students to resources like the Fly Center student staff that connects legal clinics with undocumented students. And the fact that we've already seen ICE take the lives of 2 Americans is absolutely a reason that we need to reaffirm our relationship with the university to connect students with resources so that they do not have to live in fear. We want to give rapid response information to all students because all students deserve to be in the know.
We appreciate everyone else's responses, and we just want to emphasize that everyone should feel safe on Stanford's campus, and it would be our role as ASSU exec to ensure that. And everyone's experience should be equal and not at all hindered by fear of being an immigrant or a different student on Stanford's campus. International student.
You don't answer the question.
Thank you, everyone.
Get a chance to say that?
Thank you. We're going to move on to the next question. Okay, the next question will be about university governance. During the 2024 ASSU election, a ballot initiative calling for a statement supporting the internationally recognized Boycott, Divest, Sanction, BDS campaign and calling for Stanford to divest its endowment from companies involved in apartheid Israel's war crimes was supported by 75% of graduate and 73% of undergraduate voters, with a third of student body participating in the vote. The Board of Trustees declined to take action. What do you think the ASSU's executive role is in advocating for endowment and leadership transparency? And we'll start with Built Different.
Wow, this is a hard one, huh? We both believe in a campus where people, irrespective of their background, ethnicity, religion, live in peace and without fear of discrimination. We believe in a campus where both Jewish, Muslim, Israeli, Palestinian, Arab, Christian, everybody, lives without fear. As a graduate student, I work with many amazing colleagues who are either Israeli or belong to Israeli institutions. So I personally would never sanction for a blanket boycott of BDS. I do not think Israel as a blanket should be boycotted, no. But on the other hand, it's also true that many people who are Palestinian or are advocating for Palestinian issues have had their civil rights being clamped down upon. And as we mentioned previously, that we will, when we advocate for free speech rights and preventing political persecution of students, and we will stand up for people who are, legally expressing their First Amendment rights. I think it is ridiculous that Stanford charged students with a felony. For example, when students met with Jenny Martinez, I happened to be in On-Call Cafe, and I think students should the civil rights of students should always be protected, and of course, lawful political speech should always be protected. But at the same time, I do support the contribution of our amazing Jewish colleagues and friends to our campus and make sure they also want to feel safe.
Jared and I are all about students. As somebody who's on the appropriations committee, not only on the committee, but chairs the committee, which means I manage $6 million of student activities fee money, which each and every one of you are charged every quarter. Funding is a very important issue for me and to connect students on. We both believe that voters should have the ability to dictate where their money goes. We have, over the last 2 years, funded things in accordance with the funding guidelines, and we believe that this is how funding should continue to go, and that we should empower students to make decisions that work for them.
Once again, did not answer the question. I would like to start off by saying, since our freshman year, I have been to these protests and been to these demonstrations. I have organized with these people and felt deeply for them. But I do think it isn't for us as the ASSU executive to make these political statements on behalf of the students. It is the students that make these decisions, right? So when the entire student body, say, on a referendum decides a certain way, it's the responsibility, A, of the Senate to put that in writing, and B, of the executive team to take it to the respective administrators to see how we can put that into action. I also want to challenge this idea that Celeste has been in charge of $6 million of student activity fee disbursement. These proposals were, in the words of the Daily, unanimously passed, and they are ultimately dispersed by full-time adult staff of the ASSU and SSE, not by students in the undergraduate senate. Jared was also one of 2 senators who didn't vote to divest from ethical energy sources in a vote held in the Senate last year. Thank you.
Can we get a free Palestine slate?
Okay, we're gonna go next to Bill Different for the rebuttal.
I'll say that a place like Stanford is where people of various nationalities come together and form amazing communities, which means that, like, if we want to heal the socio-political divides plaguing the world, there's very few places to do that better than Stanford. At Stanford, for example, I am friends with a lot of colleagues and friends from Iran who have also been affected by the visa clampdowns, and there's a war going on in the country right now. So, as part of ASSU Exec, we will, as we mentioned, stand up for students irrespective of their
Thank you. That is time.
Read Palestine.
I'm gonna ask for no audience interactions, please. I'm gonna follow up just real quick on that question because I know we all answered with around 30 seconds left for each person's response. Just to repeat the end of the question and the question itself. It's, what do you think the ASSU executive's role is in advocating for endowment and leadership transparency? And so I appreciate you guys' thoughts on BTS and the kind of grounding of the question, but I want to just give you guys 30 seconds to talk about leadership transparency and executive transparency, and go back to the original question. So we'll start with Bill Different again, and then we'll just do 30 seconds from each candidate using the unused time.
Fine. So we will create a publicly accessible, always viewable accountability dashboard regarding where every dollar is going and how many dollars have been spent and how many dollars are left to be spent. I think a lot of the issues why the turnout has been historically been very low is because students don't know where their money is going, and I think if we very explicitly lay out where money is going, students will trust the system more. And when it comes to issues we will also take opinion of the public as often as possible. Thank you.
Primaries?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think Jared and I obviously want to work with admin. We want to increase transparency. We have committed on our policy platform to put out a report every quarter documenting what we've done, where money is going, and all of the initiatives that we want to put forth. We also want to hold regular office hours, and honestly just talk to students and see what their thoughts are.
I would like to say that I'm not sure they fully answered that question, but Madhav and I have very strong relationships with the administration, and with those relationships, we will make sure that we're holding the leadership accountable and transparent, and also making sure that we are representing the student voice in what the students want us to share with that administration. And we will be in consistent conversations with the admin. We also know that students are frustrated with the amount of lack of transparency for where their money is going and their funding for ASSU, so we also promise to make that transparent.
Track every dollar.
Thank you. All right, thank you all for bearing with that as well. All right, we're going to move to a diversity question and a question about first-generation low-income students. So, following the Supreme Court's 2023 decision striking down race-conscious admissions processes, Stanford's class of 2028 saw a 49.4% decrease in Black enrollment and a 14.40% decrease in Latino student enrollment among first-year students compared to data from the class of 2027. Additionally, in the last several months, the university has sunsetted various programs related to diversity on campus, such as the Office for Inclusion, Belonging, and Intergroup Communication, Stanford Digital Education, and the Diversifying Academia Recruiting Excellence, or DARE Fellowship. Considering the political climate at the federal level, what is your approach to inclusivity on campus? Oh, sorry, farmers.
Yes. Thank you for the question. I would say belonging is really at the core of the Stanford experience, but belonging just doesn't come from messaging. It really comes from real support for the communities and spaces where students connect. And as the only slate endorsed by student of color advocacy groups, I think Celeste and I have really put in this work already to be able to show what we plan to do to advocate for these students. That means that means funding cultural organizations, supporting themed houses, and making sure student voices from the diverse Stanford student population are part of every single decision. Another thing we plan to do is really emphasize to the administration before making these large changes to really have student feedback, and I think that through ASSU Exec, we're the direct connection to student voices to the administration to make these decisions.
I think it's important to ask where this threat is coming from, and the answer is clear, that the Trump administration has been rolling back DEI efforts, and the university response calls into the question the university's place in the world. As Jared mentioned, we will continue to advocate for the communities that are directly affected by this unfair targeting by the administration that hurt our Stanford community and our students of color.
In response to the Trump administration, Stanford University made many actions that we disagree with, one of them being they took down the language around DEI on many of their websites, but we also understand that they took down that language to try to prevent themselves from having further federal overreach, and Stanford didn't have as many cuts to their funding as many other universities did. I just want to acknowledge that as I say that it is incredibly critical and important that all of our policies and that Stanford, for us, inclusivity means equity. So what that looks like is for students in these organizations that their organizations are receiving more money. For example, the BSU should not be funded in the same way that other student orgs are, because it is so important that as we lost some admitted students, there were less black students admitted. That is a major problem. So we need to supplement that by adding more money for those organizations. This also means that we as ASSU should be encouraging students to attend events like the powwow and all of these other all these other events that these organizations have put on.
I just also wanted to encourage all the candidates on this stage today to consult with their partners about the stakes on the country's politics before declaring that that is the politics of their entire state. Thank you.
In terms of equity inclusion to all here on this campus, one of the things I wanted to first start off with is at my community college, I was part of many organizations. For those of you that don't know, I am Ecuadorian, Chinese, and part Chickasaw, so I represent a lot of communities out here, baby. But one thing I will say, at community college, I served on the board of the Native Indigenous Cultural Advisory Committee at Pasadena City College. And I helped organize things, and I gave a couple speeches out on the campus, and we advocated for transparency to everyone, and also for inclusion, to have everyone together. And obviously, in terms of how the Trump administration, everything's been going around as of today, that is subject to the Supreme Court. But one thing I can say is that if I were to be elected as an ASSU executive cabinet, I would appoint a very diverse cabinet to make sure that all voices are heard amongst this community, especially to the ones that of my own, to my friends, and to all here on campus, as that I've had that broadened experience by my cultural background.
I would also like to say, when we were talking about FLI issues, a lot of success in college depends on navigating cultural norms. And we will ensure that, especially if you come from an underrepresented background, you will learn how to navigate the cultural norms and small things that are important for success.
First, we want to go ahead and respond to the no breaks. We're really actually happy that Eva brought up the fact that we do need to be funding student organizations like BSU, like Stanford Powwow, even more. And that's exactly what Jared and I have done. We have given BSU over $100,000 over the last 2 years and increased their annual grant by $20,000 this year in the face of DEI rollbacks. We helped fund Stanford Powwow this year by giving them an additional discretionary fund of over $10,000. We helped fund Stanford Ramadan, and as a fly student—
Thank you, that is time.
Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. All right, we're going to move into a question on free speech now. So over the last year, Daily staffers have noticed a significant decline in the number of sources willing to go on the record and speak publicly about political issues. Does Stanford have a free speech issue? What is the ASSU executive's role in fostering political dialogue? No breaks, guys.
Yeah, so in our interview with the Daily, we talked about this, but free speech is critical, and Stanford students throughout history have made a really big impact on big, massive issues because of free speech. Currently, we're only allowed 1 hour in White Plaza to do free speech, which is not okay, and we think that that should not exist because students should have the opportunity to consistently be sharing their ideas and what they align with. And we know that on day one, we would meet with the people in charge to make sure that that would be one of the main things that we're advocating for, because students should have their way more than an hour of free speech.
I also think it is a bigger problem than the 1 hour free speech at White Plaza limitation, and that I think it goes back to culture. In that, shall we look into the hiring practices at Stanford University and make sure that we're getting faculty and staff who bring political engagement to the classroom, who encourage their students to challenge the status quo, to be politically active, etc.? Are we making sure we're orienting incoming students well by giving them the disorientation guide or by teaching them about the history of Bay Area activism? Are they being taught about the importance of student journalism? Are they having access and opportunities to join the Daily or join their review or write in publications across campus? So I think it's a little bit of a minimization of this issue if you just say that the big problem with free speech is the hour limitation and not also address everything culturally that's happening around that. Thank you.
I would like to start off by saying that I love journalism and I'm a proud writer for the Daily. And I'm sure Dylan mentioned in the beginning that the Daily has been in litigation with ICE. I agree with Madhav here. I think, of course, I'm sure all three slates, including us, will advocate for expanding the free speech hour beyond 1 hour and the decibel limitation and all. But I think to promote a culture of free speech, we need two things. Number one, Stanford administration should protect its students. As I mentioned previously, we have had students being charged by a felony by the DA because of political activism, and which I think is ridiculous. And when you have policies reaching felony level charges, of course students will be afraid to speak up. So first of all, university administration needs to protect its students more. Two, culturally, I think that especially with anonymity on social media, let's say, a lot of students are afraid to speak their mind because of retaliation from the community. And as students, we should love each other and protect each other against outside forces and not let external opinions affect us. Stanford is in the public eye a lot, and I'm sure that if one of us speaks something weird, we will be on the Twitter front page tomorrow. But in either way, it's important to stay united as a community and not be affected by external forces, whether it's ICE, whether it's the Trump administration, or whether it's anonymous trolls on Twitter.
Yes, we agree with what both. Try it again. Hello. We agree with both what both candidates have said. I would say one thing is that currently that Stanford protesting hours or protesting locations is not actually just limited to White Plaza, but I think that's an issue in itself that students don't know that. And so I think if elected, we really want to plan and lead protest workshops and really work with administration and continue the work we're already doing with raising the 60 decibels. I'm surprised we're able to have this event because this is a lot louder than 60 decibels. And I think that protesting at Stanford is really important. It's a fundamental right of every student, and we would love to, help student activism at Stanford.
I just wanted to add, I think an important...
It's not your turn. Thanks. Echoing everything that Jared has said, we are not talking about planning a party. We're talking about going to the street with a megaphone. There is too much bureaucracy, and that is a problem. Stanford does have a free speech issue.
Thank you so much. What I was going to add was I agree with what Celeste and Jared have said, and I also wanted to say that a big part of student activism is sort of this passing down of best practices. We have witnessed dozens of protests and demonstrations over our time here, and Stanford has seen hundreds before that, and it's important to study what works in terms of actually lobbying the administration and making change happen, and make those resources also more accessible to students who want to organize. Hey, these are things that worked, this is what you should be doing, this is what you should try to do if you want to do more than make noise. Thank you.
All right, we're going to go a little bit back to that question because you guys all touched upon a future question we wanted to ask you guys about the university's new free speech policies. So we're going to limit this to around 30 seconds for each of you guys, and just to kind of really hone in on how would you go about, making change, affecting change with this policy. So just to give some context for everyone, in September 2024, the university implemented a new free speech policy which restricts spontaneous amplified sound louder than 60 decibels to White Plaza solely on weekdays from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. Many student groups have voiced their disapproval of these new policies and have claimed the university is silencing student activism on campus. How should the university go about supporting activism on campus, and what is your role as the executive in affecting change, if any? We're going to start with Bill Different.
Well, regarding like that particular the particular question, of course the hours should be expanded, of course the locations should be expanded, and 60 decibel is like is a joke of a number, and beyond that I think Stanford should legally protect students when they're, and not let them be hounded by external forces and not them get charged by legally, for example. And it's a community with different
time. Next to farm raised.
Yeah, we obviously don't agree with this new policy that restricts spontaneous amplified sound. That is literally the point of a protest. The point of a protest is so that you're able to spontaneously organize. And if the university is attacking that, there's an issue. We want to go back to how Stanford was in the 90s, where if you weren't doing anything illegal, it was fine to protest. The way that we enact that change is talking to student administrators, talking to Jenny Martinez's free speech point person, going to political action communities, and stopping student doxing.
Thank you, that is time.
As we talked about, this is something we're going to bring up day one with the administration, as well as having a person on our cabinet who it will be their particular job to advocate for this free speech, as well as arguing against these arbitrary sound limits, and then also using the trust that we previously mentioned having with the administration to work on these. We also got an email today, I know it also went to Celeste and Jared, about meeting with people to discuss how we can fight against this free speech.
Thank you, candidates. Now we're going to move on to a question about sexual assault and safety on campus. Many have raised concerns about the university's response to a recent sexual assault case on campus, but these concerns go back to 2025, with the Daily shining light on the lack of support students have felt after filing reports. As ASSU executives, what is your position on the current state of campus security? Would you advocate any changes to the current system? And we'll begin with farm raised.
We are devastated and disgusted by the recent sexual assault which occurred at the beginning of this quarter. Sexual assault should never happen. I personally, after the incident occurred, took it upon myself to purchase pepper spray and alarms because it's constantly something women on this campus have to think about, and it's disgusting. We think that our position on this is that we commend the university for their increased support in terms of APEX security and hiring more security, but more needs to be done. We need a comprehensive 4-year education on sexual assault and violence for all 4 years on this campus. We are responsible for campus culture. We need to enforce buddy systems around campus, enforcing when we see something, saying something, because an attack on one member of our community should be an attack on all.
Next, no breaks.
I really want to acknowledge what Celeste said because I really appreciate that. And coming back to campus after being abroad and having my first Saturday back on campus have this incident was terrible. And now as I leave places at night, I make sure that I'm always walking back with a friend, which is never how anyone on campus should feel, but especially as a woman in a highly academic institution. So sexual assault should never happen on campus, and we should not have to be walking around with pepper spray. And so therefore, because these things are happening, obviously the institution needs to change and we need more policies. People don't know where these blue light systems are. People don't really even know how it works after you have your first tour as an incoming freshman. And people don't know about all the different resources, and 5-Share should be expanded to make sure that it's an option for everyone all of the time. And Madhav and I, when planning certain events, such as Full Moon on the Quad, made sure that we were in active communication with these organizations on campus, like Share Title IX and Shipwreck, to make sure that our language has always been correct and is widely encompassing, and that these certain resources are at these events so that everyone feels comfortable, especially with the event that was historically more challenging when it was happening in the 90s, as they talked about.
I agree with my my competitors up here on this stage on the acts of Title IX and safety, but one new perspective I did want to bring to this campus is the amount of school shootings that happen in the United States of America. And as of Stanford, you see tourists from all over the world come to visit this campus. And when you think about it, what if someone were to come to campus with a gun, a rifle,
or an automatic. It would be terrible. We actually had a couple senators come up to us and talk about some possible policies, so that would be something we would want to implement for a safer campus for everyone here that comes, whether tourists or people from all over, or even for the matter family. And we want to make sure that the campus stays as safe as it can, especially on the quad and the premises around the Oval and all around campus.
And I'll just add a couple of points. I think more expanded security guards, especially during night, all over campus would be a concrete policy we can implement. And of course, at every party that's thrown, and organized beforehand, we should have more people that are designated, like, sober buddies, to make sure that campus is that the environment is safe for everyone, and making sure that the policies around sober bodies are more coherent across all parties.
I want to say, as a student athlete here, that there's a mandatory 4-hour Title IX education that student athletes have to do every year, or you're not allowed to practice or play. And I think that should be mandatory for all students at Stanford, because currently there's just the mandatory frosh education on this issue. I also think that we would have a dedicated Title IX people in our cabinet. And I just wanted to say, on the point of school shootings, seeing what happened in Brown was terrible, and we need to consider that.
Thank you, candidate. That is time. Next, we're going to move on to a question about hate speech. Yes, everyone, let's give everyone a round of applause. Next, we're going to move on to a question about hate speech. We've seen recent incidents of hate speech on campus, including a thread of anti-Semitic emails that were sent to members of Stanford's Jewish community. In their original statement, the university noted they are working with law enforcement to investigate the matter. What stance and approaches do you see ASSU and the executive take in protecting communities on campus from threats and combating hate speech? We'll start with no breaks.
We first want to say that hate speech is not free speech, and while we have been advocating for increased hours for free speech and making sure that that is something that is allowed for all students, that in no way is hate speech or anything that is going against other student groups. That is not at all something that we would tolerate. But we will say is the role of the ASSU exec is to make sure that we are providing platforms for students to share their words in free speech, but again, not hate speech, and it's not at all okay that they received this email.
I just wanted to add an addendum, though, that what we do want to encourage is disagreement. I think one of the things that makes university campuses great is when people voice their disagreements with each other, and we want to continue to build forums where that happened. I hosted a town hall earlier this year where 70 students came and talked about their issues with housing and their issues with the way the community centers were run, or DEI, or what's going on in the Middle East, etc. And we were able to foster those conversations, which I think prevents it from getting to the point where students are compelled to act in more violent and hateful ways. I also do think it's important to make a distinction between that sort of criticism and disagreement and when it becomes hate speech and when you need to get law enforcement involved, etc. And that's not a line I can claim to understand particularly well, but I'm excited to learn from students and hear perspectives from organizers and people who've worked in this area before to make that our official platform.
Regarding the free speech versus hate speech issue, I would like to quote a former Supreme Court justice. You know it when you see it. As I was talking when we were discussing the BDS issue, we believe that students of every background, every culture deserve to feel safe on campus, which means that, of course, we would strongly condemn and would never condone any sort of speech that makes someone feel threatened or unsafe. There is, of course, a very, especially regarding divisive issues, there is a fine line to draw where certain forms of civil discourse and civil disagreement should of course be allowed, and that's why we strongly advocate for free speech. But none of that should ever affect somebody else. None of that should make somebody else's lives worse. And which is why, when it comes to issues such as the anti-Semitic emails, we promise to, work with law enforcement if similar issues happen. I think as a student body, especially when it comes to divisive issues, it's important to be respectful of each other and understand that many people can have different opinions on certain things, and ultimately understand that if they reach Stanford like you did, they are also here for a reason.
I think we all got a little closer. Finally, we'll go into the closing statements. Starting with Built Different. You have 1 minute.
Oh.
I've only been here 2 quarters, and I'm aware that it's been a short time here. But being here at a place for a small amount of time, you really get a sense of the world. I've met with football players, baseball players, every sport you can imagine, done magic for all of them. You know, I've come all around campus, and I feel like I've had a really good, diverse experience of this campus. And I've asked many questions, as me and Ankikar have, and we do want to do our best to serve the people. You know, at the moment, we're not in fraternities nor sororities at the moment. But we've got a good perspective of this campus, and we want to do our very best to serve the people here at Stanford University. Ankikar, if you want to add?
I want to add only 2 sentences. We will advocate for the greatest number of students in the greatest number of ways, and will bring the most amount of concrete action. Vote for us.
At the end of the day, this election really isn't about who has the best ideas. It's about who can actually deliver for students. And that's where really experience matters. I would say over the past few years, Celeste and I have had the pleasure of being elected by all of you guys to work inside ASSU.
Here.
Mic switch.
Being able to allocate over $10 million in funding, pass thoughtful legislation, and really advocate for the full Stanford student body, and seeing firsthand what it takes to turn ideas into real outcomes. That's why Celeste and I are running for what we do. We're not running to learn how ASSU works. We already know. We're running to make it better for students. Faster, more transparent funding, real support for traditions in student life, and focusing on the everyday experiences that make Stanford Stanford. One experience when I first came here, when during NSO, when your RAs already know your name.
Thank you, that is time.
Even though I was cut off. Vote farm raised.
Thank you.
For this.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for listening to all of us and for being here today. Madhav and I have had a wonderful time so far our past 3 years at Stanford, and we owe a lot of that to so many of the people that came before us and who have put their blood, sweat, and tears into this university, and we promise to do the same. Our campaign was no breaks, because we both will have truly no breaks for Stanford and go all the way by pouring ourselves and our energy into this institution and into all of you.
I just want to end on, there's this framework for trust called 2 beers and a puppy. And it goes, who on this stage would you like to have 2 beers with, and would you trust to take care of your puppy for the weekend? So when you all leave here today, I want you to look at the 3 slates up here and ask yourself, who would you want to have 2 beers with, and who would you trust to take care of your puppy? Thank you very much. Vote no breaks.
And that is now the 2026 executive debate. Let's give it up for all 3.
That was pretty good. Jay Money.